Hi, this is Tracy Mars with Remax Equity Group, and while the weather's hot, so is this topic. I'm going to spend some time today talking and going over the Buyer Brokerage Services Agreement. This is a very important form that, as of January 1st of this year, is a mandatory form for buyers in the state of Washington. So if you've been thinking about buying a home or you are in the process of buying a home, you are going to come across this if you haven't already. Now, one of the things about it is a lot of people are signing it and maybe not knowing exactly what they're signing. So while the form itself is very important, I have highlighted some sections of it that I think are sections that you really need to pay attention to. And so those are the sections that we're going to go over to for this video. Now, as of August 17th, this form becomes even a little bit more interesting. And the fact that a realtor cannot show you even a home without you signing this form first in the state of Washington after August 17th. So currently, you drive around, you see a cute house, call the realtor. We just have to have this form signed within a reasonable time frame. Open houses, model homes, you can still go see at any time before or after August 17th without this form signed. You do not need a buyer broker services agreement signed at an open house or at a model home with the builder. All right, but as of August 17th, if you call and say, Tracy, I found a great home, can you show me this home? I have to have you sign this form first before I can show you any home, as is the same with any and all realtors in the state of Washington. So what is this form? Let's jump in. All right, first thing we're going to talk about, this is the brokerage firm, you know what I mean. This is the buyer's name. This is the areas that you might be looking into. And we break areas down in the county based upon numbers versus like cities or zip codes. Term. Now, this is automatically blank because you can negotiate the term. That's why it's a blank. You can negotiate that term. It's automatically, if not filled in, for 60 days. So if you sign this contract with a realtor, this part's blank, it's automatically a 60-day contract with that realtor. Now that can be changed. As I said, it's negotiable. It could be 120 days, 180 days. It could be 5 days. It could be 7 days. It could be a 1 day. If you can say, look, I am not comfortable doing a longer contract with you, I'm going to do a 5-day contract or a 1-day contract. You have that option to go negotiate. That's why that term space is blank. Agency. This is one of the most important areas that are getting a lot of people tripped up right now. So pamphlet, you're going to get a real estate brokerage in Washington pamphlet that a realtor will go over with you. This is the realtor that you are hiring. My name's just filled in there because it's the form that's on my computer. Agency to relationship. The reason why this is in yellow is you have two options. You have an exclusive or a non-exclusive option. Exclusive is this is a formal legal binding contract. If you choose an exclusive agency relationship with that realtor, you're engaged. Okay? So you can cancel this form. You can cancel this contract, but if you cancel this contract without legal cause, you can be held liable for damages. So think of exclusive, you're exclusively dating. A little bit harder to break out of. Non-exclusive. Non-exclusive is like dinner and drinks. Okay. One of the things on here says buyer may enter into a non-exclusive agency relationship with other real estate firms during this term. So non-exclusive is you're just dating, you're just hanging out, you're having a good time, dinner and drinks, until you find the right person and enter a more exclusive contract. Exclusive, non-exclusive. Every realtor, most realtors are going to automatically want you to do an exclusive. If you're not comfortable at that time, you can say, I am not ready for an exclusive relationship with you. I would like to do non-exclusive first. And if the realtor says, I'm not comfortable with that, you can agree and do an exclusive, or say, no, I am only willing to do non-exclusive, and move on to another realtor. Again, you have that right. Limited dual agency. There are 3 types of realtors. If you followed my blog for a while, you understand that there's 3 types of realtors. There's a seller's realtor, there's a buyer's realtor, and what we call a dual realtor. Now, anytime a seller or a buyer enters a contract with a realtor, they are now a client. They are owed a right to fiduciary responsibility, meaning we have to hold our client's interests above our own. The seller's realtor works for the seller. Their job is to protect the seller's best interest and negotiate on behalf of the seller. Okay. The buyer's agent, of course, works for the buyer. Our job is to try to help you find the best home we can within the price range you give us, to help formulate this offer for the buyer's best interest, to walk you through the home inspection, to again hold your values and your interests above our own. Seller works for the seller, buyer works for the buyer. That's pretty simplified terms. Now, a dual agent is someone, if you're driving around town, you see a cute little house alongside the road. The dual agent, you call the name of the agent or the team that's on the sign. They are a dual agent. Or they're just representing the seller, and you would be a unrepresented buyer. So if you are okay working with a dual agent, then you would fill in this blank. So again, seller has their agent, buyer has their agent. The dual agent is someone who is representing both the seller and the buyer on the same transaction. Okay? If you're okay with it, you're going to go ahead and sign here. If you are not okay sharing your realtor representation with the sellers, you do not have to sign initial here. I did highlight this portion, and I'm sure you've read it now that the buyer acknowledges there's a limited dual agent, that this law prohibits a buyer broker from advocating terms favorable to buyer to the detriment of the seller. It limits buyer's broker representation to the buyer because, again, they already represent the seller. If you're not okay with it, don't sign here. If you are, sign it. A team is a dual agent. A builder's agent is a dual agent. Compensation. All right, this is where things get a little bit more tricky. The history of real estate follows as this. When I first got licensed, almost 20 years ago, I was told by a lot of other realtors, older realtors especially, that you have to list to last, Tracy. And why would they say that? Because all the way up into the late 1900s, offers and purchases went through the listing agent, the seller's agent. Okay. If you wanted to buy a home, you called the listing agent. Now, some people would hire their own buyer's agencies. Some would, but most didn't. Most went directly to the seller's agent, listing agents. That's why they said you had to list to last. Well, as it turns out, again, the seller's agent, the listing agent or team represents the seller. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, not to the buyer. This brought about lawsuits. And the lawsuits stated, you know what, you're right. Both sides deserve equal representation in purchasing a home or selling a home. Everyone deserves their own representation. This is, let's hold it, you know, let's can safely assume that if I'm helping someone buy a home, 3 to 5 times a month, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years, that I have a little bit more knowledge about the paperwork and the process and what's involved in helping people buy and sell homes versus someone who might only do this a couple of times in their life or have never done this before. So that is why it's important that everybody has their own representation, and the courts agreed. And a lot of buyers said, okay, this is great. We have the right to our own representation and we can negotiate this, but what we lack is the affordability to do so. So the way that things have been done, up until now, and kind of yes and no. So this is where things get a little bit gray. So what would happen? I would talk with the seller. Mr. and Ms. Seller, you're selling their home. We would talk about marketing. We talk about this stuff, and we would negotiate a commission. And because it is the seller's right to negotiate the commission with their agent. There is no set or standard commissions. Realtors don't even talk about commissions amongst ourselves. Okay? Every agent works separately, individually, as we are 1099 independent contractors. So it's just like hiring someone to do your flooring or your roofing or looking at a couple of different mechanics. You ask questions. You hire the person you feel best represents what you're looking for. All right, but you do get to negotiate commission. And as part of this, we would say, Mr. and Ms. Seller, this is the commission we're negotiating. We would negotiate it, we would set, and we agree. And then I would tell the seller, Mr. and Ms. Seller, I'm going to give a portion of my commission to the buyer's representative, the buyer's agent, as a BAC, a buyer's agent compensation. Because I want to bring buyers and their buyer's agents to look at your home. And I think it's important, as most realtors do, that every party has their own representation. The buyers have someone who represents them as I am representing you. And that's the way things have been done. Now, does that mean that every seller has offered the seller's buyer's compensation? Maybe not. every agent works differently, and the agents have been splitting it however they wanted to, or the sellers have said, hey, I only want to offer so much. So that's kind of where we've been at. Now, does this change? No. How it's being presented? Yes. But what we're also talking about, the fact is the buyers have the right to negotiate their compensation as well. Because what happens if the seller is not offering a buyer's agent compensation and a home that you're looking at is not offering that? Or maybe it's not offering as much as you've agreed to pay to your agent. Now, remember there's lawsuits in the 1990s that basically said everyone owes equal right to representation. And that's why things changed from that list to last. And in fact, for the last 20 years or so, real estate has really pushed on the idea of, hey, sellers have their representation, buyers have their representation. Dual agency is not illegal in the state of Washington, but more and more people have kind of shied away from it as the fact that we think everybody deserves equal right to representation. Largest purchase you'll ever make. The only thing it's going to cost you more is having a kid. So we've really kind of been pushing on that one. However, not that that's changing. It's just how we're discussing how commission's going to work. Because again, not everybody wants to or feels the same. So let's go back and talk about how this part of the compensation works. All right. Now remember how I said the seller has the right to negotiate compensation, whatever that may be, with their agent. The buyer's agent has the right to do the same with the buyers. Because again, not all homes are going to offer compensation. Some will offer more, some will offer less, some might not offer any at all. So as one of the things that we have to do as real estate agents is tell you, how are we getting paid and who is going to be paying us? So right here, we're saying buyer acknowledges there are no standard compensation rates and that the rates in this agreement, compensation, is fully negotiable, not set by law. And we're going to say this amount here is what your realtor is looking to be paid. Now, again, this number, again, if it's blank for a reason because it's negotiable. This number can be 2%, 2.25, 1.5, 3%, 2.5, 2.75. I don't know, whatever you and your realtor negotiate. Okay? So we will say, let's put in here, I'm putting in a number, again, just examples only. Let's say you guys have said your realtor is going to be paid 2.5% of the purchase price for helping you buy your home. And you're like, that's great. I understand how you're getting paid, what your costs are involved, because trust me, we don't make, it's called gross pay for a reason, my friends. It's because it's gross, that's how much we don't get. All right. Remember number 5, because we're going to go back to it in a second. Seller compensation offer. When you are out there looking at homes. Now, currently, if I'm pulling up homes for a buyer, I can see what the BAC is being offered at. And that BAC could be 2%, 2.25%, 2.2%, 2.5%. We don't know. That BAC is all over the board because, again, it's not a set number. Okay, it's whatever has been negotiated between the seller and the seller's agent is being offered to the buyer's agent's compensation. I can see what that is currently. As of August 17th, the transparency of that goes away. It will no longer be there on paper in the MLS. Now, does that mean it's gone away? No. That just means it's not as readily transparent or available to the public or even to realtors. So we might be calling realtors saying, hey, I have a client who's interested in this home. Is there a buyer agent compensation, a buyer courtesy being allowed on this home? And there may be, and there may not be. And maybe the agent says, yes, there is, say, 2.25% being offered on this home. Okay? Well, remember, on number 5 here, you agreed to a 2.5% commission to your agent. So if the seller is only offering a 2.25, you might have a little bit of an issue there. So what happens if, let's say you agreed on to your realtor, again, all numbers are just examples, to a 2% minimum commission. And the commission that's being offered on the sellers is more than that. Well, you have a couple options here. Okay. But what happens if it's less? Remember, let's say that you agree to 2.5 and the seller's offering a 2%. Well, who makes up that 0.5% difference? Well, when you're making the offer on line 17 on the first page of the offer, it says, hey, this is how much commission is being paid to the buyers. We are putting that in writing in the contract. And the seller can come back and say, yes, I agree to the 2.5. And the seller can come back and say, no, I only agreed to the 2%. Now we have to come back to you and say, hey, you know what? You did agree on the contract that there'd be 2.5%. The seller's offers less than compensation. Who's paying the difference? Now, maybe the agent says, don't worry about it. We got this, or we're doing this. There's other options. There's others. I don't know. This is something that you have to talk about with your realtor. When you're talking to realtors and you're hiring realtors, remember, go back to the blog that we did on questions to ask your realtor. This is a new one that you're going to add to that. You're going to add, hey, what happens if the buyer agent compensation being offered by the seller is less than the amount that I've agreed to pay you here? And excuse my doorbell. Someone is at my doorbell. Our doorbell makes different sounds, so hopefully that didn't pick up. Anyhow, if it does, sorry, it's a fun one. Anyhow, if the commission is less than what you've agreed to pay your realtor, who's paying the remaining amount? That is a question you need to ask, because that's going to be an important one. All right. Compensation terms. And again, I'm going to stress it again to be on the safe side. All commission is negotiable for the sellers, and it is negotiable for the buyers. In the past, how many years, when a seller is selling their home, they've talked to a couple of realtors, asked about their customer service, their marketing, and what their commission rates are. As a buyer, it's something now you should be doing the same. What is your terms and your contracts? What's your commission rates? What's your marketing? How is your service? What are you offering? Why should you hire that realtor to represent you? All right. Questions you need to consider and ask. All right. Compensation terms. Remember, exclusive agency, non-exclusive. Non-exclusive is dinner and drinks. Exclusive means this is a legal binding contract for this length of term, for this term that you've already agreed to. All right. Remember, cancellation without legal cause. Now, showings and listings. Some homes, just like now, offer a compensation. Some homes offer less, some offers more, and some homes will not. One of the questions that we have to ask you is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when you are buying your home, if the home is not offering a commission, buyer's agent commission, do you still want to see it? If they are, that's great. What happens if it's less than what you've agreed to? Questions we need to ask. How the lending world is going to work with this, we're not sure yet. But one of the things that we do see an issue with VA financing is due to VA regulations. If the buyer has a VA loan, compensation has to be paid for by a seller. So if the seller is not offering a buyer agency compensation, then a VA buyer is going to have to pay for their own realtor or use the seller's realtor, which either means they're working with a dual agent or they're not being represented at all. So that is also the question you have to ask if you fall in love with a home and there's no buyer's agent compensation being offered on that home. If you can't afford to pay for your own real estate agent, or you can't pay for the commission, or you guys can't come to terms on what, again, you go to work every day to get paid. So do we. Got to pay mortgages to pay and kids to feed, just like, you. If we can't agree on those terms, then you can go to the seller's agent, in that which case you're agreeing to a dual agency, or you're coming in as an unrepresented buyer where the seller has representation as you don't. Again, I don't know how this will shake out. This is really new. It does feel a little bit like the way things were done before the lawsuits of the 90s. I'm sure it won't be. I think a lot of it's just kind of what we've already been doing. It's just, again, I understand that we want to be more clear on how everyone's getting paid. There has, just like this form, sometimes things get not talked about and then people don't understand. So it is very important that we do understand how things work. If you have questions, please, by all means, reach out. That is what we're here for. You can always reach me at 360-903-3504. Other than that, have a great day and thanks for coming. Oh, by the way, see you at the